And that goes back to that adaptability.
Mm,
Life is not linear, right?
yeah.
Careers aren't linear, relationships aren't linear, none of that. And I think if you have a plan and you're dead set on it and it doesn't go the way you want, that's not good. So one of my favorite philosophers, also actors, is Jim Carrey. I don't know,
Oh yeah. Oh
Jim Carrey.
yeah. I love it.
He's incredible, and as much for his acting as the way his mind works around philosophy and spirituality. And he has this kind of talk track where he says, you dream up a good life, you dream up kind of what you want, but you don't focus on every single step that gets you there, right? You work towards
Mm,
instinctively the ways to go. You accept that sometimes the path will deviate, but if you have
yeah.
kind of that idea of what you want your life to be, and you don't hold on and grip to what you think will get you there, you wake up one day and you're in a much better spot than you were the day before.
Welcome to your Wordless podcast, the space where we redefine success, self-worth, and transformation. I am Nick Nieras, the soul-centered architect of transformation, helping you unlock your highest potential and build a legacy beyond limits. Now, whether it is self-mastery, career breakthroughs, or wealth creation, this is where change begins. Now let's dive in. Can you first tell us what was it like growing up as a Musa? Hey, I'd like to say thank you to sponsor of our episode today, Fish Audio. Now, if you're a podcaster, voiceover artist, or content creator looking for hyper-realistic AI-generated voices, you need to check out Fish Audio. Ranked among the top 2 most realistic voice generators in 13 languages, Fish Audio lets you create high-quality voiceovers with just a few clicks. It's open source friendly, super fast, and best of all, affordable with the lowest prices in the market. Try it today for free at fish.audio and start creating with AI-powered voices today. Now, let's get back to the video you're watching. Hi, I'm Nick Nieras, your host of the Your Wordless podcast. Now, if this real raw stories hit home, don't wait. Please follow, like, and subscribe my Spotify and YouTube. For bite-sized inspirational reels, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Don't wait, your transformation starts today. Thank you, and bye for now.
So I was ready for this because I listened to a couple of your episodes, and I'm glad that I did, because this would have been a one to answer otherwise. And I thought I put some thought into how I wanted to answer it. And I think, for me, growing up as Musa Hamad was very inconsistent. There was a lot of change and a lot of different places that I've lived and different people that were around. And, you kind of looked surprised at that. And I thought about how I wanted to frame that. And I think for a lot of people, what I always say is, the adverse things that we deal with in life, if we harness them in the right way, can become a superpower. And so when we talk about how that kind of hits the crossroads of technology, being able to adapt, being able to address change as it happens quickly is not a skill that you can learn in a classroom. It's not something, I think it's something that you build throughout the course of your life. And if you look at things the right way, those inconsistencies that we have in our youth, for some of us, can become a superpower in adulthood if we're able to harness them and use them in the right way. So for me, certainly, having before the age of 5 lived in Florida, Virginia, the West Bank, and Palestine, right? Like all these different places, having all these different family members around that had a hand in raising me, all helped contribute to making me that dynamic IT leader that you so graciously introduced at the top of the podcast.
What an interesting, how do I say this, landscape of growing up that you've had. So, okay, my first question, what is your backstory? So have you always been interested in becoming, a leader in your, in the IT industry, or did you actually see that this is where we're headed?
So I love telling my IT origin story, because there's a pivotal moment that kind of really changed the course of my life. So when I was younger, I went to college and I was not very good at school. I didn't really enjoy it. It was one of those things that I did because grandma and mom really wanted me to do it. first generation immigrant mindset is you got to go to college, you got to get the job, you got to do this, you got to do that. So I majored in government international politics with an emphasis
Wow.
on Mideast studies. And I like to joke that after a year and a half, they politely asked me to not come back.
No,
Yeah,
no, you're not. You're joking, right?
no, I'm serious. They ended up being asked to leave school because I wasn't doing as well as they would have liked. And had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And I ended up working at a shoe store at the mall, Champs, for those of your listeners that are in the States that would know it, and met a young lady out one night who had gone to George Washington University, had a great degree, worked at a law firm. And I remember one day just noticing and observing that all of her friends' boyfriends had like 9 to 5 jobs. So I got up one day and I said, you know what? I'm going to go get a 9 to 5 job. So I walked into a temp agency and they tested me on various aptitudes. And it turned out I could type pretty fast, which I didn't know was even a skill that I had. It was just a class I took in 8th grade and I just happened to be good at it. So I was able to get some data entry work and started doing that. Later relocated to Memphis, Tennessee with that same woman and was having a hard time finding a job. And I'll never forget it. Her dad one day just looks at me out of the blue. He was the CFO of an automotive group. And he said, we need an IT guy at the car dealerships. Why they had a couple of car dealerships. He said, why don't you come do it? And I tell this story. It is literally the moment that changed my life professionally, because I looked at him and I said, Alan, I don't know the first thing about computers. And he looks at me and he goes, fake it. And that's what I did. And so the reason he thought of me for this is because anytime something was broken on his computer, I could fix it by Googling it. I didn't have to tell. And he
Call
just,
Musa.
yeah, pretty much. Right. And he gave me my first shot. He gave me a belief that I could do this thing. And so I started doing inventory and fixing printers and troubleshooting computers. And that got me my foot in the door in tech. And then we moved from Memphis to Seattle, and Seattle's a very tech rich environment. And I was able to secure a job at a law firm called Perkins Coie, which is the biggest law firm in Seattle. Again, just help desk, service desk. This is Musa. How may I help you? That type of thing. And I was just fortunate enough to be around a lot of really good, inspiring a lot of really good technical folks who had really good technical expertise. And I just took to it. And I think the biggest thing that I learned when I think about my career journey and progression is it was never really as much about the technology as it was the people.
Mm.
I always observed and realized that, like, as a technician, you could be one of two ways. And this is what I tell people that would later be a part of the teams that I had the privilege of leading. You could be a jerk, for lack of a better way to put it. There's that stereotypical tech person, that's not very polite.
Yeah.
But if you want to do that,
I've encountered some of them.
We all have. You better be really good at fixing the problem, because people are not going to tolerate that type of attitude from somebody that can't fix it. Then there was me. I wasn't as good at the tech, so I worked on being nice to people so that I could get some grace as I was fixing the problems. And I just recognized and learned that, like, customer service was such a big part that was lacking in IT. And growing up in a family of all small business owners, restaurants and delis and gas stations and stuff like that, I watched my family get to know their customers, know their names, know their stories, know the things they liked and didn't like. And I took kind of that same approach and applied it to IT. So from the law firm, I was lucky enough, I actually at one point was direct IT support to Paul Allen, who was co-founder of Microsoft. Team of individuals that supported him directly, regardless of where he went in the world.
Whoa.
Really cool job. And then from there, that was a very high demand job in terms of travel and everything. And I transitioned from that into IT management. My first job was at a consulting company that needed to build out their IT org, and the rest just kind of built on itself from there. I just kept being fortunate enough to find really great roles that were a good fit for me, and being a part of some really great teams. I think it all started because somebody saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and I'm forever grateful to Alan, and I may send him this link and let him give him a listen so he can get the shout out. Yeah, he saw something in me that I didn't know. And honestly, if he hadn't done that, I'm not sure where I would be in my career today. So that's kind of the origin story of Musa, the technologist.
It's so interesting that you actually you had no idea that this is where you wanted to be in, but then somehow the stars aligned for you, right? And not a lot of people are privileged enough to, how do I say this? I have guests that come on my show and say, "Hey, just like your story, I never thought that I'd be this, but then somehow like some force or I get some downloads, they get some downloads and they say, okay, you know what? Or there's some events that happen. So one person had a grandma, and then I think she was struck with some rare disease, and she went in full out. She got her PhD in that, and she's now one of the lead in spreading that awareness. Yeah, I think you're at least five that I have on my show that says this. So, but for those people, I just want to get your take on this. That may have started with what they really wanted. They had this vision, and then somehow things did not pan out. That's the other side of it. Hey love, it's Nick Nyaras here. And if you've been feeling stuck, lost, or like no matter how hard you try, something still holds you back, I want you to know this. You are not broken. You are just carrying layers that were never yours to begin with. Through my one-on-one transformational coaching, I help you clear the subconscious blocks keeping you small so you can finally step into the confident, magnetic, wealthy version of you that's always been waiting. We blend mindset, soul, and strategy. Coaching meets hypnosis. Science meets spirit. It is deep, it is powerful, and it works. And if you're curious where to start, I have a free self-hypnosis audio waiting just for you. Just head to the link in the show notes below, download them, and press play. It only takes 10 minutes to feel the shift. But if you are ready to rise now, apply for a one-to-one coaching. Let us make this your breakthrough year. Because why? You are worthy and you are more than enough. Now let's get back to the video you're watching.
And that goes back to that adaptability.
Mm.
Life is not linear, right? Careers aren't linear, relationships aren't linear, none of that. And I think if you have a plan and you're dead set on it and it doesn't go the way you want, that's not good. So one of my favorite philosophers, also actors, is Jim Carrey.
Oh yeah. Oh
Jim
yeah.
Carrey.
Yeah, I love his.
He's incredible, and as much for his acting as the way his mind works around philosophy and spirituality. And he has this kind of talk track where he says, you dream up a good life, you dream up kind of what you want, but you don't focus on every single step that gets you there, right? You work towards instinctively the ways to go. You accept that sometimes the path will deviate. But if you have that idea of what you want your life to be and you don't hold on and grip to what you think will get you there, you wake up one day and you're in a much better spot than you were the day before.
Exactly, because our human mind can only think and envision what we can envision. There's limitation to it. Now, the human mind, don't get me wrong, it's super powerful. We can create and picture whatever it is that we want in our head and make it reality if we put enough energy to it, right? Because everything's energy. Then I think the key is also flexibility and adaptability. Ever more so important into the technology. Like you're a technologist, AI. I know AI has been around for so long, but now it's just boom, 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 boom. And then on LinkedIn, I think 2 days back, layoffs are so rampant. What do you see for them? Like if they're not on this bandwagon of AI or technology.
There's a couple of things that you said that took me on a couple of different thoughts and paths.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, interestingly, as you were talking initially, I thought of, so I describe myself as a Taoist, and there's a philosopher that I follow and listen to quite a bit. That's right. Alan Watts, and that talks about rigidity versus flexibility. And a really good example that Alan Watts uses is the strong oak tree versus like the tree that has bounce to it. And you envision like when snow falls on the branch of the tree, if it doesn't bend, the snow just piles up, and then it eventually breaks. Whereas if your branch is flexible, right, snow piles up and then it falls off and you're able to bounce back, right? And so when I think of flexibility versus rigidity, when we apply it to our careers or to our lives, trying to maintain that mindset is much easier said than done here on a podcast in a controlled environment, of course, but certainly something I try to lean into. Now, shifting gears to what you talked about with some of the cuts that are happening in government, and not just government, a lot of privately held companies. I was just reading about, Salesforce, I think over the last year has cut 8,000 jobs. There's companies, right, that are doing it. There's a couple of ways my head goes on that. The first is, as it relates to the government, I said something to somebody the other day, and I think it was a little unpopular and they didn't really like it too much, but taking the government as an example, sometimes when something has grown so big and become so bureaucratic, you almost need an extreme reaction to it, right? And an extreme reaction is what we're getting right now. Now, the extreme reaction is happening for the wrong reasons. And in my mind, and I don't want to get into the politics of everything here. I think of it when I'm looking at the government through that lens, it's a business, and the business of the government making a decision to eliminate expenses and right.
Yes.
And in some cases, they're eliminating departments entirely. But at some point, we're going to rebuild those. And when we do that, we'll have an opportunity to potentially do it better. Now, that doesn't well for the humans that are kind of being impacted by this. But when you break something down completely, it's always an opportunity to rebuild. When we think about it through the lens of AI and privately held companies, I've talked about this a little bit with some folks. People are going to, I believe, that individuals that work for companies are going to have to start thinking of themselves less as doers and more as orchestrators. Because the fact is, AI can only do what we tell it to do, right? To a certain extent. And so what we're going to find is, yes, there's going to be a reduction in the need for people to do some of this work, where before you would have needed 4 people to do a function, say billing or something like that as a hypothetical. Now you can one person who's kind of sitting in the driver's seat, pressing a couple buttons and also. Now, when we think about that from the standpoint of what that creates is opportunity for those other people that are no longer doing that, what we would consider to be like the menial billing job, as an example. Well, now there's an opportunity for them to learn another skill or do something to enhance the business in a different way. But before we get to that point, we're going to have to go through the pain of people losing their jobs to AI and us having this mindset that, obviously being tongue in cheek, but the machines are coming for our jobs kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. There's going to be opportunity born out of this, but not before there's pain. And that goes back to that flexibility and that adaptiveness that we need to embrace, I think, as a society, as a species, what have you.
Yeah. And again, it's easier said than done because change is the only constant, right? But the change is the hardest.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And I empathize with them because I too was laid off last year, and that got me off on different path altogether. And that's the impetus of this podcast. And had I not been, the laid off came after podcast, but then that reinforced my, how do I say this, my belief or that I'm on the right path. So no longer a 9 to 5, now jumping into my own practice, my own business and podcasting while building a community. And now sometimes I do have days where I say it is hard out there. It's like you're a one person for everything. If you're a solopreneur, you're one person for everything. And then when you scroll on different platforms, you see, okay, which one works for this platform, which one doesn't, right? It can get very lonely and demotivating at times when you don't get that engagement. But I also think, because my podcast talks a lot about self-worth, that tying that to where I used to be before, tying that to some external success, instead of feeling what I feel, but what feels good to me, just going, burning myself out. I'm also taking the approach to, really look within. And it took me those moments in my life where I had to really break down, experience all of this trauma and being, having had to deal with some toxic bosses in the work environment before. And now coming back to what you said, orchestrating is something that I think so right and correct and apt for each one of us because we're all creators. Now we
Yeah.
can create a lot of different things, but then with AI or whatever that's available to us now,
It's a forced
use that to
amplifier. Even
exactly.
even for you as a solopreneur or anybody,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
all have. You think if we went back 50 years and told somebody in the 60s or 70s the technology that we have in our pocket, right? What we can do, you could have produced and done this whole podcast from this thing.
yes,
You know what I'm saying? I mean, like advancement is good, but it's scary because it causes layoffs. And but in your case, and I think in the case of so many people, what's the saying? When God closes a door, or closes a
opens
door, he
another.
opens a window. And I think if you don't see that, if you don't see the opportunity, then you're gonna get left behind. But if you do, and you use the word trauma, and I didn't want to say that word specifically, but that trauma can become your superpower if you know how to
Yeah.
and use it right. And in your case, here you are. You know, you've got this great podcast, and I saw some of the work you do. I think it's RTT is what.
RTT, yes, rapid
Yeah,
transformational therapy.
yeah, and you know that's great. I'm somebody who's experienced and gone through EMDR treatment. You know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
a believer in the fact that like we all need to examine our subconscious, and so for you having that door closed opened up this whole other world, and I think it's a beautiful thing. You know.
Thank you. It again, it is never. I think when I look back, I worked the corporate. I jumped into different industries and I worked. I climbed the corporate ladder, but knowing, having this vision in my head that okay, one day I'm going to work for myself. I didn't know. I didn't expect it was going to come very early.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe they did
Again,
you. Maybe they did
adaptability.
you a favor. You know.
Actually,
Yeah.
because had they not restructured the organization, I think I would have still stayed because I still have that, you know, I'm human. Of course I want to feel safe. Of course I want to feel secure. And then while building something on my side hustle at the time,
Yeah.
take it as a side hustle. But right now it's like you got that push from that universe and say, hey Nick, quit, excuse my language, dicking around and then just go for
I
it.
didn't
Like
realize
what
it
are
was.
you
So
waiting
it's not a
for?
family show. That's great.
Just go. Like if I
Yeah.
don't send you this tower moment, you would not have gone. It's like, because I was really comfortable. I was, the money
Who
was
doesn't like a
good.
paycheck and benefits?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. the
Yeah.
the pay was good. So
Yeah.
and having a lot of guests come up to my show and tell me that this is their story, and in the back of my head, whenever you guys are talking, it kind of pivots me to, hey, this is good. You know what? This is not whatever I'm feeling. I was feeling okay. To be honest, today before the interview, I was feeling down because I had this checklist. Now I am against checklists. I just take three things and then to complete, prioritize, and then just complete them. At least I feel good about myself once these are completed. But then today there's just something was just off. But I said, you know what? I'm just gonna my time a bit and do what's important. So now I have you. I needed to get you on the show because yes, I am a person of my word.
Yeah.
But then I had another one, but I was supposed to be a guest on that show. But it was 2 hours earlier. But I think I texted him last night and I said, I rescheduled to a month later because I needed to get some things off the ground with my business. So I was like, okay, Nick, you talk about this. You're a big believer of being holistic in all aspects of your life, mind, body, and soul. So if you're feeling something, don't force it.
Yeah. Yeah. So often we don't listen to, I've read a couple of different things and I've heard different people speak on the fact and the idea that our gut knows, like our gut and our body knows what it is we want, what we want to do. And anytime we feel an anxiousness about something, like we need to listen to that,
Yes.
and really understand that's primal instinct, right? That's something that comes from a place that I don't think we even all fully understand within ourselves. But usually it's right. You know what I mean? And I think it's so important to listen to that. We worry so much also, I think, that following our gut is gonna offend others. All
Mm,
we think is gonna be offensive to the people around us. And so what? Sometimes,
so
right? I mean,
yeah.
like it's just gonna happen. I have a mentor of mine, she uses this phrase. She calls it leadership on a me first basis.
I
Right?
needed that. Oh my God, I had
Yeah.
chills.
And she, when she hit me with that at first, it like every time I think about it, it opens up a little more because on the one hand, we could view that as being selfish. I always, whenever I started a company or I hire somebody, I always ask them a question: who do you work for? And inevitably, they'll say, "Oh, I work for X company, whatever." I said, "No, you work for you Inc. Right? The company is a revenue stream for Nick Inc. Right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's who you work for." And there's a lot of people that get uncomfortable with that. Well, that's really, it is, because here's the thing: if you lead yourself and you do what it takes to make yourself the best version of yourself, when you're a part of a team, you're giving everybody around you permission to elevate themselves and do the same. And if you do it in a truly heart-led way, it's not selfish. You're all getting better. There's a difference between leadership on a me first basis and thinking about me Inc. versus standing on people's shoulders to achieve an outcome. And I think sometimes people conflate the two, right?
Yes.
If we view our success in a positive light and want to bring people along on that journey versus using them to achieve the outcome, we're in a much better spot, and everybody around us is too. What's the saying? A rising tide raises all the ship.
Yes.
So, but I think that's great, and hopefully that person that you rescheduled with understood and they moved on. And if they didn't, they didn't, and they'll move on too.
Yeah. And then it's 10 p.m. for me, at 10 a.m. for me now. So I was scheduled to speak with him at 8. So I texted him when I got up and I said, "Hey, just dropping a line. I know I rescheduled a couple of hours back, but this is just to, let you know." So I haven't checked my message, but I think he's a cool person because I've interviewed him before. So we swapped. So I interviewed, yeah. So I don't think it's a big, but I think, yeah.
You know what's funny? Before I was coming on here, I was kind of prepping my area and I was checking the lighting and everything. This is my first time doing something like this. And so
No?
like,
Really?
yeah, this
No
is my
way.
first time. I've
Okay.
done some other speaking things in podcasts, but they weren't over video and they were more about like specific things within technology. It wasn't as
Right.
free flowing as this. And I realized I had been doing some work for a client and I left my notebook, and it rattled me. I was like, man, I'm on
Uh,
my note. And my girlfriend said to me, she goes, you need to stop worrying about the notebook, sit down, breathe, and just focus on this because you've got this thing to do, and put the notebook aside. And so the idea of coming into something with a little bit of angst, I feel that like sometimes we have those things that just throw you off. They're little,
yes.
but to us, they're not little, right? That
Yeah.
is,
Because it gives comfort, and because we value this, the conversation we're about to have, and the connection that we may build, will go, who knows, beyond the podcast, and then collaboration is possible. Like today, even we're collaborating virtually. Who knows, right?
from across the world. Yeah,
Exactly.
something else that if we would have told somebody 50 years ago we were going to be doing this,
Yeah.
their minds would have been blown,
Nah,
right? And we're just doing this
I
on our
don't believe you.
computers.
Exactly. And we've never met.
No,
This is not scripted.
yeah.
Exactly.
It's funny. Beth, she said to me, she goes, "Well, did you talk before?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "She seems like the type of person that's just going to grip it and rip it, and we're just going to see what happens."
Yes,
So,
yes, yes.
I love it. I love it.
Yes, I am a person of winging it. Though before winging, of course, I'm going to do a little bit of prep, but then I get the flexibility and the adaptability. So
There's such a thing as over preparation, I think, right? And you lose authenticity when you over prepare and when you're over scripted. And so I love this. I think it's great. And we've already touched on so many things, right?
30 minutes in, yeah. And I want to circle back, the buzzword. Oh my God. I used touch on the part where you said people first. Okay. Now I could resonate with that so much because at my last job, so I was hired as somebody who should be taking care of the operation side of things, shared center, a BPO. And then when they see me, because they see me, I'm a great connector. So long story short, they pivoted me to a different role where it's people and culture. And it was a BPO where they have a center in China, but then they built one in Malaysia. So I was one of the pioneers with the management. So when coming from a consultant background, you have this mindset where you want to give value and you want to present and you want to change things for the better, increase productivity, increase efficiency, yada, yada, yada. But then I was met with very, how do I say, demotivating pushback and hard pushback where that kind of, shook my belief of self-worth, like I was trying to build that leaving from another corporate where, it was very demanding as well. So I kind of joined this company where I thought, okay, this could be like a new turning over a new leaf. And I was met with that pushback as well. So that started this fire within me that I said, okay, you know what? I am gonna start what I can, and I believe in what it is that I wanna create to the world. So I mean, my point here is people first. I could actually change my whole approach, and now I'm gonna term this coin "fake it" in a bad way, because your term was, fake it till you make it. I was, for me, I was like trying to dumb myself down and fake it to fit in, but then it didn't do me any
Or
good as well.
almost maybe say to survive.
Yeah, to survive, to survive. But then, after trying, I'm a person, really give my 1000% first. Try until really it's a no-go. Then okay, I'll start losing interest, and then I'm going to focus on other things. So, and that started the whole chain. I mean, the whole point here, people first. And I can see that in you as well. You value your people, the way you talk so graciously about your team, and how basically this is just your MO or your mantra.
I love, I think for me, if you ask my now 7-year-old, what does daddy do? She would say he brings people together to get shit done. Right. And
Orchestrator.
it's not a family show. Like, I really think when it comes to that, and it's hard when you want to come in and affect change in a positive way, and you're coming to an environment that's stagnant and there's a lot of negativity. I mean, I think one of the things that I've always found and learned is, I was just thinking about this today. Everywhere I've ever gone where there's been a rebuild of a team, the interesting thing is some of the right people were already there. They were just not being used in the right way. And I think of the way you're describing the situation you were in, you were probably one of those people that just wasn't being used to your strength. There's a soccer coach, Pep Guardiola, who coaches Man City, who is like, I couldn't even name all the accolades. I don't know enough about it, but I know that they win a lot. And I'm not a huge fan of football or soccer or however we're going to refer to it here, but I'm a huge fan of good coaches.
Mm.
And the thing that you learn about him and his style is his approach is not rigid, right? Getting back to that. He doesn't have a system and then takes the players to fit into it. He takes the team that he's given and he creates the system around their strength. And we have so many companies and so many leaders that just have this idea, these boxes that they want to put people in, and you've got to do
Yes.
this and you've got to do it like that. And we limit and we restrict the creativity, and that feeling that you had was you were being stifled. You weren't allowed to be creative, to think outside the box, to go solve problems that you knew had to solve, right? Was your way going to absolutely be the right way? No, absolutely not. But I bet it was going to be directionally closer than where the business was today.
I love that, directionally closer. Yes.
Yeah. And so like, I just think I love that, and the teams that I've been a part of, I always use sports analogies, and I think eventually they get tired of it, but like, team sports is business is team sports. It's just without the physical element of it, right? Like, you're bringing people together to try to accomplish something, and you can do it by being very rigid and saying, you're going to do this and you're going to do this. Or you can allow your people to be creative, right? Like a soccer player who likes to facilitate and make passes. You can't script what that individual does. You give them space to create. A basketball player who knows how to make a pass behind their head or do something like that. You didn't tell them that they had to do that. That comes creativity in the moment. And when you allow for that space for people, look, within constraints, right? Like, you're not completely letting everybody off the rails.
Yeah.
But you've got to allow people to exercise some flexibility, creativity. And I think in so many companies that have gotten so big, they just have this idea, we need this person to do this. We need one person that does this. We need one person that does this. And now all of a sudden we've got AI coming in and doing some of those things and taking those away. And people have lost the ability to be creative and work inside it. And so we're afraid of what's coming. Whereas if we thought, oh, how can I use this? How can I use this to orchestrate and create and make for me to think about things differently? You know, it's just a different way of looking at it. But I don't even know how we got onto this topic and started rambling, but like,
No.
I think you were talking about being stifled, right? And
yes, being stifled. And then how people first approach has always been innate within me. Like, I think you just need to be nice. Even if you don't like somebody, you just, tell them respectfully and say, hey, yeah, this is not where we're not heading the same direction, but then I think this is where you'd flourish, and yeah.
And I think the other thing, as you were saying that, one of the things that my more recent journey has caused me to realize is that there's a reason for everything that people do, right? When you have that person that's very protective of a process or very protective of something, they're doing it out of fear, right? Like there's a reason. Somebody who doesn't want to listen to anybody else's ideas, at some point they felt like they weren't listened to, right? And for most people, right, when they're put in a position where they get to decide whether they're going to be listened, whether they're going to listen or not, they're going to do what's been modeled for them, or they're going to lean on what's easy for them. And I just think that if we step back and examine the why people do things and try to meet them some of the way, and then sometimes it's just, hey, you know what? This isn't working. That's okay. And I'll tell you, I've left a couple of companies that way too, right? It's just what it is.
Yes.
And it's no hard feelings, right? It's business. But
it's business, yeah.
There's a great quote, and I don't even remember where it came from, but I just want to make sure that I don't take credit for it. But somebody one time said, it's not show friends, it's show business, right? Right. And so it's like, come on, it's not personal, just what we're trying to do. And if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. And we move on and move forward.
Wow. We went on a tangent and we came back.
We came back.
Okay, now I'm going to ask some of the questions. Let's see. Oh, but I think we did touch on them. Yeah, I didn't even look at any of the questions here. But okay, we're going to go to a rather technical, not so technical, but then relevant, very relevant now.
All right.
How do you identify process inefficiencies and implement lean solutions to boost performance?
You talk to the users and the stakeholders. Right. I mean, I think one of the most important things that I feel like I've ever done when I step into a role is you talk to the peers and you talk to the folks that are embedded in the process and using it. 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you what's wrong. Now you have to filter out the complaining. You have to filter the personal emotion from it. But I think you identify inefficiency by talking to the people that do the work. And when you have enough of those conversations, you start to identify not just where there's inefficiency, but they either intentionally or inadvertently start giving you solutions for that. I think we just have a tendency to overcomplicate everything, don't we? Like it's just human nature.
Human nature.
It's just what we do. And
and we love the bad things.
Yeah,
we love to amplify negative.
It's funny. I've had at times in my career, and I'll say dating over the course of the 20 years, so that hopefully if anybody listens to this, they're not feeling singled out. Like I have a tendency to oversimplify things sometimes. And where that usually will get me into trouble is with legal teams because they don't like.
Oh, yeah.
And so like, I think there's a balance to be found in that. We do need some of the, I don't even want to call it complexity, but you need to build in some adaptability into a process. And when you build in adaptability, it invariably becomes complexity that's weaved in. But I think that at the end of the day, for me, it's always finding those inefficiencies has always been born about talking to the people. That would be my biggest thing. And then, certainly you step back and you look at a process end to end, and then we have logical brains, most of us, that would say why are we doing this in 17 steps when 5 would do?
Yeah.
And so, I think talking to the people and mapping out, like visually writing out what that process is, when you see it, something happens where you're like, oh man, this really is a lot more cumbersome than we realized. And maybe we do need to do something about this. So that's the answer to that.
And then would you...
It's not like the be all end all answer. What's the name?
So you'd had experience you just mentioned a few minutes ago that you've started companies, you started teams, you brought people together, right? Like, what was your experience like, and what's the key thing that brought all of these people together and then scale it to something even bigger?
I think I remember one of the first teams that I had the privilege of being a part of from the ground up was an IT department at a company of 300 people. And in that case, they hired me to be the IT manager, but they also hired the first employee that was going to work with me. So I didn't have a say in who that person was.
Oh my God. I had the same
really
thing.
lucky.
Okay.
I'm going to send him the link to this. So I'll give Caesar a shout out. I was really lucky that I ended up being matched with somebody that I was compatible with. And I think what happened there and where I've always found success in building teams either from scratch or rebuilding teams or whatever is you find compatibility. And what I mean by that is, and look, most of the time you're lucky if you join a team and there's already people there. In this case where we were both hired at the same time, is you're lucky enough to where you find individuals whose skill set offset yours, right? Where there's not a lot of overlap. There's this natural synergy between the two individuals where one of them likes to do certain things and the other one doesn't. So prime example, I was just talking to a guy that I worked with recently. We were talking about why we work so well together. And the reason he and I work so well together is because I'm very big picture, pie in the sky, like, oh, we can make this happen. Let's go. And he's the guy that can go and do it. But the thing is, he doesn't get mad at me for casting this big vision. He knows that the way I work is I'm throwing out ideas, knowing we're not going to do all of it, right?
Yes.
But it's that idea that if we get directionally toward it, where a lot of people who are technical and in the details, their brains would break at the idea of all these things that I've listed. He understood we're not trying to go do all this. Musa's saying all of this. If we can get 50% of the way there, it's going to be great, right? And so I think finding the greatest formula for success for that is finding the people that accept each other for their strengths and their weaknesses, don't cast blame and don't get upset when things don't go right, and just keep moving forward. But if you're lucky enough, like this individual that I worked with, Will, I mean, we just fed off of each other so well. And for those in your audience who enjoy basketball, I don't know if you're a basketball fan, but old school basketball, there was John Stockton and Karl Malone, these two guys.
Yes.
And one of them loved to pass the ball and the other one loved to dunk the ball.
Yeah.
It was perfect. There was no friction or tension between them. Each of their strengths made the other better. You can't find that in an interview. And that's why you always say, like, a lot of times when I go in to be a part of a team that may need like a rebuild or a revamp, the right pieces are already there. They're just being used in the wrong way. And so, in the case where I built the team from the ground up and I didn't get to make the first hire, I was just lucky enough that he was the right piece to be alongside me, right? And then from there, we were able to go build and add folks. And we knew the chemistry that we had. And after that, you kind of know who you want to bring in, the types of people that you want to bring in. And it just positive energy and activity with purpose leads to a good place. And I think that idea of positive energy starts with those of us who are in leadership roles. If we're going to sit and be negative about things all the time, then what's everybody around us going to be? Now, here you go. You're going to get another sports movie reference. But one of my favorite movies of all time is Remember the Titans. If you've
Yeah.
And there's a great line in it where one of the characters looks at another when they're arguing about somebody on the team not doing it. And he looks at the guy who's the captain. He says, attitude reflects leadership, captain. Because he told him, he said, you have a bad attitude. And he said, yeah, I might, but my attitude is reflective of your leadership. And I think there's so much to that. If your leader gets up in the morning and is just negative and is just complaining about people and so-and-so can't do this. And so then that's what you're going to get. But if you come into it and you're positive, you're uplifting. Now, I actually had to do a little bit of research when I was at my last company because there's something called toxic positivity.
Mm.
I worry that sometimes maybe I'm a little too sunshine and rainbows. So there's certainly a balance, right? You can't always, not everything is always great, but certainly I'd rather want to lean towards the positivity than focusing on the negative. And I think if you do that, if you bring that positivity, people bring their best selves and really great things happen, whether you're building a team from the ground up or rebuilding a team or integrating teams. That's something that I've had the good fortune of being a part of, is when companies have been acquired and bringing teams together. The last time I did that, people weren't sure how we should do it. And I said, let's just smash them together and see what happens, right? Like
Oh my
you
gosh.
can't sit and wait for perfection to do these things. Got to be messy. You got to just go and move directionally towards where you're trying to get.
Yeah, when you said messy, a quote from Robin Sharma just popped up in my head. The beginning is difficult, the middle is messy, but the end is gorgeous.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that. Yeah. So true.
something. Yeah, something like that. Then I think, yeah, and we also careful that not everything is rainbow and sunshine,
Right.
But yeah, but optimism, I think, is one of the thing that should be in your vocab, I would say. Yes, yes. So
What's the point of doing it if you're not going to be optimistic about the outcome? Unless
exactly,
you're just showing up for a paycheck, and we've all worked with those people and they make us want to quit, right?
exactly. Wow. So we again,
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
made
Love it.
a few rounds. Okay, Musa, what are you working on currently that's making you excited?
Yeah. So I actually I'm working on a couple of things and I can't go into too much detail because of the work that they do, and I would be outing myself a little bit. But there's a couple of early stage startups that I've been fortunate enough that they've pulled me in and just kind of help a little bit with product roadmap, with identifying the ideal customer profile, and doing things like that. And I love talking to early stage companies. So that's been a lot of fun. It's been very enjoyable. I'm doing this. I'm trying to do more podcast. Like, this is my first. I've got two others booked that I'm really excited about. So, like, trying to identify.
My show is
You're
the first.
you're the
Wow,
yeah. You're my first podcast, and
wow.
this is something I've been trying to kind of do and branch into. I have, there's the Musa-isms. Everybody always says, "Oh, Musa, you're always saying this." Like,
Please.
I want to find a place to, like, kind of bring those together and, like, share them with people. And when you share a part of yourself, whether it's your writing or your concepts or your ideas, it's scary, right? There's that inner voice that tells us, why do people want to hear what I have to say?
Yes.
And so, like, this is an opportunity in this way of being like, no, you know what? Maybe there are some people, even if it's one person that hears this and it resonates. And so working hard to refine what it is, because as you can tell, I can get going and it becomes a little long-winded at times. So working to refine a little bit of, like, some of my messaging around my core beliefs around business, spirituality, and things like that, and how those intersect is something I've been doing quite a bit. The last company that I was at, I left in January. I put in my notice in November because I'd been called back to office, and that was in Seattle. And so another thing that I'm focused on right now is getting to be a dad again. So being back closer to my 7-year-old daughter has been really great. So that's just been a really good, joyful thing to get to do that. And writing a little bit, again, that idea that, like, we have all these thoughts and who really wants to hear them and see them. So working towards what it looks like to put some of that in the world and in a way where I'm not fearful of the judgment that may come back or anything like that. Yeah, just
Wow.
that type of stuff. Nothing big, just kind of.
I think you got a great thing going on. Like, no, if you hadn't told me that this was your first, I think you're a natural.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you so much.
I think you're gonna do great, Musa. People need to hear what you have to say, especially somebody who's in the technology industry
Yeah.
and blending in with people,
Humanity.
coming in with, yes, humanity, coming in with people first approach. I think this is very much needed. So So, Musa, we're going to pivot to a self-worth question.
Love
So
it.
the question for you that I have in my mind right now, how do you define self-worth?
That's a good one. How do you define self-worth? I think, it's funny. Before you joined up, I wrote the title of your podcast, You're Worthless. And then, and now you just asked me how you define self-worth. And for me, I think I wrote You're Worthless equals you're nothing. And when I say that, I think it may have a negative connotation for some folks. But what I mean by that is like when we think of where we are in the grand scheme of things, we really are pretty insignificant, right? When it comes to everything that's happening on this planet, in this universe type of thing. And so I think I define self-worth as, for me, it's an acceptance of my role and my place in the universe and the world, right? And just knowing that my worth to the world, there's nothing more valuable. I'm going to go back to Jim Carrey again. What he says, he goes, the most valuable currency we have is the way we leave people feeling. Self-worth to me is caring enough about the people around me to leave them better than I found them, which then in turn, when you're putting out that type of light and positivity, how can you have negative feelings inside of you? You know what I mean? And so like you feel like you're spreading that love and you're worth that as well. And so I think self-worth ties for me too. And that's a tough question. But I think for me,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
no, you're good. I think it's the idea of how I leave people around me. When I tie it to like my purpose, I want to be everybody's biggest fan. I want to lift people up, and I think self-worth is making the world a better place, one person at a time.
Whew, beautiful. Yes. I don't want to add anything to that because I think you caught on the fact that actually the way I've been called my podcast name, one of my earlier on, I think 1.5 years ago when I first started, somebody was like scrolling through Podmatch and saw my podcast name and said, is this a satirical podcast? Like, what is she?
Yeah,
I mean, but that's the whole point because that gets you thinking.
provoking.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So,
I see
okay.
it.
So I did,
Yeah,
you saw it. Okay.
but the person that would view that negatively probably has a higher view of themselves, right? And so like
Yes.
the idea that the audacity to say
The
that,
audacity. Yeah.
say that you're
With
nothing or
this
you're not
person.
yeah, like
Exactly.
you have to look at it from a different lens. It's not negative. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, dust to dust, right? At the end of the day, we're so insignificant in the course of like what happens on this planet in this universe. And so it's just like accepting that is, I think it's a big step towards people being the best version of themselves, not taking themselves too seriously and saying, yeah, who am I? Wolf.
Another one.
Earth's greatest wish. Goodness. There's like a dozen things that I could sit and list, but just based on what we've talked about today, I think my heart's greatest wish would be for the leaders in this world, both from the corporate sense, from the political sense, to find a little more compassion and empathy for humanity. I think that would be my answer to that. Like sitting at the crossroads of being somebody who's gone through and is a part of it near the corporate American machine, being of Palestinian descent and seeing what's happening, in the Middle East and Gaza and on the West Bank, which I think has almost been forgotten because of what's happened in Gaza. And you just wonder how can these things happen? And I think people have just lost their empathy and their kindness and their humanity, and they're just so hyper focused on outcomes and results and dollars and greed. And so that would be my answer to that.
Now, if you could create a quote right now for you to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be? I promise this is the last one.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, I have written so many different things and now I'm on the spot and I'm not sure what to say.
Well, I love your take on Ellen Watts, and I
Yeah.
think
So I can quote Alan Watts all day. I think in terms of like what I would say, find kindness. If you find kindness in yourself and push it out to the world, it'll come back to you. And you can be successful in business. You can be successful in athletics. You can be successful as a parent. You can be successful at anything if you just find kindness and empathy first. And so I would just remind people of that. There's been so many philosophers and brilliant people that have encapsulated these words so beautifully, and it's why books get published and everything like that. But they all talk about the same thing, right? Love and kindness. And I think if I were to be remembered for anything, it would be to tell people to find that. There's a reason why. Here you go. I got you. There's a reason for everything that people do. The question is, do you care enough to try to find out, or are you just going to judge them for that?
And we'll let that sink in.
There you go.
Okay, Musa, how can people reach out to you?
I know. As a part of this effort to start doing these podcast things, what I've learned is you also need a social media presence, which I have none.
Well, you accumulated quite a bit of a follower on the LinkedIn
On LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm working on an Instagram. I'm working on a TikTok. It's that thing. It goes back to the idea of, oh my gosh, why do people want to see what I have to say, right? And it's that hurdle that we have to cross. For now, hit me up on LinkedIn, and I will probably respond. I love engaging on there. I need to do more of it. I was looking back through, like, I'll go like a year without a post. I was just, I got off of social media in 2018 as a part of like just wanting to detach and kind of work more on my mental health and everything. And it was so great. It was really like, because I was on it for the wrong reasons. I was that guy that was posting pictures of all my food.
We all had that phase.
I think we all had that phase, right?
Yes.
Now I'm kind of recovering, and so I'm ready to start delving back in. But for now, hit me up on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to continue a conversation with anybody that wants to chat, and be on the lookout. There's other stuff coming soon.
Awesome. Now, any last message to listeners before we close this great interview?
I've said it all. I just want to say to you, thank you so much genuinely for taking a chance on me and letting me come on here and chat with you. And I hope that this message resonates with somebody. And if even one part of it gets taken away, and, that'd be a beautiful thing. And just stay low, keep your feet moving, stay adaptable, stay flexible, and good things will come.
Wow. And I would like to thank you too for expressing that gratitude, because I am truly, truly honored that this is your first podcast.
Thank you.
This is one for the books for Musa. Okay. So for our listeners, that is a wrap on today's episode with Mousa Hamad. Thank you for your wisdom and dedication to uplifting others. This has been You're Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Remember, if you've ever felt worthless, you are not alone. Your soul chose to be here to matter. And for that reason alone, you are worthy. A huge thank you again to Musa and to all of you for listening. Until next time, I am Nick Nieras. Keep shining, keep growing, and always remember you are worthy and you are enough. See you in the next episode. Thank you, Musa, for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, Musa. Good evening to you. How are you?
Doing well. How are you this evening?
I am doing very well too, except it's the morning for me.
Right. That's right.
Well, thank you for saying yes to be interviewed today and for reaching out. I'd like to introduce myself formally to you and to all of our listeners, maybe listening the first time. My name is Nicolette. I am the creator of a podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now we have the IT man. The man who is very, very important in the IT world. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our listeners, and then we can get right into our conversation.
Great, thank you.
Hi, everyone. We have Mousa Hamad here with us. Mousa is a dynamic IT and operations leader who blends cutting-edge technology expertise with a truly people-first approach. With a rich background in enterprise technology and SaaS, Musa has driven transformational growth for early to mid-stage organizations. So please join me in welcoming Musa to the show. Yay!
It all sounds way more impressive than it actually is.
Well, I mean, this is why I have you on the show. I want to know your work, I want to know your background. But before all of that, Musa, first up, I'd like to take the listeners and the guests a trip down memory lane first. Can you first tell us what was it like growing up as a Musa? Love this episode? Now, transformation doesn't end here. Head on to @holistic.lifestyle_with_Nick. That is on my Instagram. Or head on to my website, www.nicknieras.com holisticlifestyle.com for more info on my coaching framework, which is the Worthy, Authentic, and Abundant Framework, digital guides, and my upcoming events such as retreats and master classes and workshops. Now, I also do intuitive readings where we get to check on your soul path,